Hello, welcome to Life is Art. I'm Roy, and let's get ready to draw. Grab a pencil and a paper, and just get your supplies ready. Pause the video if you need to get your things, and then come back to it. You can grab a number 2 pencil, a mechanical pencil, anything you have. You can see here that I'm using drawing pencils. They range from F all the way up to 9B. F is the lightest, 9B is the darkest, and I wanted to just show you what a difference having these type of pencils will make. So I'm going to run through this and shade in from F all the way on up to 9B so you can see the difference. And you can see side by side the darkest one is still a little lighter than the lightest one, but you do have to press about the same to really achieve the results that I'm getting here. You can draw pretty dark with the F, but you can get much darker with the 9B. That's going to be obvious, but if you go from a B to a 2B, you can get some pretty good darkness out of the B just by pressing harder. But at the end, you can really get some really darks out of this 9B that you won't ever get out of an F or an H or a B. But if all you have is a number 2, go ahead and use it. Today we're going to do some 3D drawing using relational space, substance, and depth, and I'll explain a little more of that as we go. Here's my setup. These are actually going to be roosters and chickens. My first rooster here is just a rounded triangle, and you can see how I've come a little higher up on the page for my next triangle. I've made it a little smaller. The next one behind it is also smaller, and they just get higher up and smaller as they go. That's what I call relational space. The placement on the page, the overlapping triangles where one object is a little bit behind the other, and then the size. As they get higher up on the page, they get further back, they get smaller. These are all very important aspects of relational space, and this is how we're going to be able to make things look like they're 3 dimensions instead of just being flat on the page. Now there's a lot that we need to do here to really get some details on this picture, but this is a really good start. Now even on this one, as I start drawing eyes here, the first eye, you're going to notice that it kind of overlaps just a little bit from where the beak area is, and then the second eye is going to be even further behind the beak and a little bit smaller, and so it's going to overlap. We're going to have size. You see that I come up a little bit higher on the page so that I'm using the placement as well. So all of those things start to help my picture to look 3D. So I'm going to work in some more of the details here so that you can kind of see the picture start to take place. We're going to give him his little goatee and his mohawk. I don't think that's really what roosters call it, but that's what I'm going to call it today. And I'm just going to frame out some of the basic details on this picture. I'm going to do kind of another triangle shape for the wing. I don't kind of go all the way up there on that left side because I may want to change some of the details and not have it just be a complete triangle. Now I'm going to work some feet in here, and the little claws, that little spur on the back of his leg that sticks out, and a few feet, and then I can take my eraser and erase out part of that line so the leg overlaps the bottom of the body there. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up a little bit on my picture just to get rid of any of the lines that I don't need. And that's one thing that's important to start out with your light pencil, an F or an H, so that you can draw light enough that you can erase the lines completely if they're extra or if they're just a little bit of a mistake. So I draw the other foot, and notice the placement. It's a little higher up. It's also overlapped by the body, and it's just a little bit smaller. So it starts to look like it's a little bit further away. So let me draw on these pupils, the eyes on the rooster. Notice how I leave a little spot, just a little bit of a highlight in the middle there so that it looks like there's a reflection hitting it. And that'll make him look a lot more alive. I'm going to fill in the rest of his beak there. I'm going to shade in the inside of his mouth, but even at the top edge of his beak, you'll notice I'm leaving a little bit of a white strip, kind of a little thick space there where the light can hit it, and then further down into his beak is shaded in, so you can tell that that's his open mouth. But see, I don't just blacken in that whole area all the way up to the line. You can see I'm leaving just a little bit of a of a white thickness on the back side of the beak, so it starts to look 3D. Now at this point, it's going to be really important to start working a lot more details in. Things that are going to make our rooster look three-dimensional other than the relational space. There's a lot more to it than just size and overlapping and placement. So what we're going to do is we're going to start working in some good details to help him look 3D. What I'm going to do here first is I'm going to start putting some contour lines, and I think roosters kind of have this texture looking thing going on the leg anyway, but anytime you have a rounded cylinder, something that's sort of a tube shape, you can run these contour lines. Notice they're not straight across, they're curved just a little bit, and that helps the legs start to look a little more rounded. Then I'm going to go ahead and shade in the side, up at the upper right, drawing an arrow here that will indicate the direction my light is coming from, the direction my sun is coming from. So everything on that side of the page is going to be brighter. Everything on the left side and a little bit under the rooster is going to get a little bit darker. So I'm going to darken in a little bit of a shading here on his legs. So that's one of the important ways to help my images on my picture look like they have substance. So we shade in for substance, we use these contour lines, and then another one that we add will be shadows. You'll see as we get to it, we'll do some more shading on the rooster. We'll give him a lot more substance and 3 dimensions, and then he'll get a shadow as well, and that will help our picture start to really take shape. So just draw along. If I get too far ahead of you, take a break, pause it, get situated and get caught up, and then unpause it and follow along. I'm using a blending stump, but you can use your finger here. You can sort of wad up a paper towel really small at an end, and you can use that as well. And I'm going to shade in here on his mohawk a little bit on the side of it because it's behind his body, so a lot of that's going to be in shadow. So I'm going to add that in there. I'm using maybe at this point a 2 or a 3B just to get in some of my darker lines and shadings going on. Once I get some of these details worked out later on, I'll switch to an even darker pencil to do some finishing touches. Now look, I shade a little under the eye, a little under the beak. Everything gets a little bit of a shadow there, and that's the shadow. The eye and the beak are casting a shadow, so that's the other part to making something look like it has substance. Shadows, shading, and the contour lines. So let me shade in on the side of his goatee, and then I'm going to scribble in a little bit, just kind of really scribbling. You can add a lot of texture with the way you shade. It doesn't have to always be the same. And I'm going to scribble that in to make it look like he's got little bits of feathers sticking out, poking here and there. And I just scribble and scribble really kind of randomly, really fun and loose, and have a good time with it. And so I'm going to go under there, the left side near the bottom. I'm also going to go and really darken up a little bit under the wing because there'll be more of a shadow kind of where the wing meets the body, and there's not as much light that gets in there. So I really want that to look like the wings really sitting up a little bit on top of the body and that it's not directly flat with it. And these lines, I'm not adding as much shading there where the light hits, but I can't just have a straight line. I want that texture to be there too. So I scribble little bits of just loose little pieces along the line too, which is another reason it's really important to draw these guidelines really light. Otherwise you just end up with a straight line that it's hard to change into the texture that you want. So I'm going to give him little wings, little bits of feathers, or little rooster fingers on there, and really shade up under there on the left side to make them stand out and give him a little bit of substance so he looks like he's really there, really on the page. He's not just flat. Now here we go, we're going to add the shadow in. I'm going to shade underneath him so that he looks like he's really standing there. If you stand outside in the sun and you look to the other side where the sun isn't, you've got a shadow too. So that's important to make him look 3D, is to have that sun. Then I'm going to use my blending stick. Again, you can use your finger, whatever you have, your finger, paper towel, roll it up, have fun with it. Really just smudge it in there good with your finger and really blend it so it looks nice and smooth. And you see, I didn't even actually shade on the wing, but because I'm using that blending stump, and it works the same way with your finger. Once you pick up some of the graphite off the pencil, you can just use your finger or the blending stump, and you can get some shading done that way. So I'm just going to go through here and smooth everything out a little bit so that it looks really nice, so that I can smooth some of those pencil marks across. Again, if you're having trouble keeping up, just pause and get caught up. I've grabbed a darker pencil here, a little bit of like a 6B or a 9B, and I'm going back over some of the darker areas just to help it stand out a little bit more. See how I'm adding some real dark spots right under the toes there, right at the edge where his foot's meeting the ground, so that it really gets a good shadow in there. Now, if you're drawing along, I'd really like to see what you're doing too, so take a picture of it, and at the end of this video, I'll have my website and my Facebook site. You can go to the website to the Contact Us and send us an email and attach that picture, or you can just send us a message, or you can even go right to our Facebook page and post it right onto our page so we can see it. We'd love to see the pictures that you're drawing. So do your version of it and let us see how it's going for you. So the other important thing now is, if I want my picture to really stand out, I have to do details on the rest of my objects back there. And what I've done was I've created a group of hens. So all of these chickens will get really similar details to the rooster, and all of the same principles. This one's looking front, so there won't be so much overlapping with the eyes. We'll see both of them completely. I'm going to add her some little eyelashes, and looks like she's got some eyeshadow on maybe, and maybe she just had her hair done. She's got some really poofy, good looking hair. And I'm going to add her wings. They're almost triangle shapes there too, a little bit of her toes sticking out, and then I'm going to have this one here kind of looking over just a little bit. So we are going to have some overlap. See how that back eye is a little bit smaller and overlapped by the front eye? And then I'm going to add the wing there. She's turned enough to the side that we're going to want a little bit of a tail showing. So we draw the tail in, and then we move on and we continue doing the details on these. So that one's looking the other way, so the left eye overlaps the right eye. And I'm just going to keep adding these details in, very similar. What you're going to notice though is that I'm not putting as many details. I'm not getting quite as dark. I'm not working the details nearly as much as I did with the rooster. So that's the other thing that I told you we were going to work on today, is creating 3D through a sense of depth. And one way that we create depth in our picture is through having the near objects being really detailed, really strong lines, a lot going on, a lot of details, a lot of shading, some really dark darks. As things get further away, there's less details. Some of the lines get a little lighter, they get a little thinner. Some of the details aren't drawn in nearly as much, and you're going to see as I go through this, I'm adding the shading here, so they all get shadows on each chicken, and then there's a big shading. Since they're sitting there as a group, they've just got one shadow that they create. And as I go through this, I'm going to add some more chickens a little further in the background, and there'll be almost no details on them because they're so far in the back we just don't see them nearly as well. And so that creates 3 dimensions through a use of depth. And I call that where things get lighter and lighter as they go back. I've heard other people use the word for it, density. And that's what I use as well. So density, the things that are near are nice and dark with lots of details. The things further in the background, not so much detail, not so dark. Now I'm using all the other words though. Look how I'm making them higher. I'm on the page, smaller, and there's a little bit of overlapping, so they start to look like there's some 3D things happening here. Look how way back in the back there's hardly any details. See how quickly I'm drawing these? Nice and fast, no real details. The other word for depth is that it needs a horizon line. Now, if you're drawing a landscape, that's just kind of where the sky comes to the ground. That's the horizon. In our case, we're going to make at the end of this field. Otherwise, our chickens just look like they're floating in space there. So we don't want them floating, so add a little fence. And then I just work some more details. You can do as much as you want. I added a tail. I forgot the rooster's tail, so that's important. And I went ahead and added some trees and a barn back there in the background. Notice on my fence the near one has a little more detail, and on the left side behind that barn is a really small fence. So take your pictures of yours, send it to us, let us see what you're doing, let us know if you like drawing along and the type of art that you'd like to see, and we'll do some more of these. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.